Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea reports another case of the coronavirus, bringing the total here to 31. It's a woman in the city of Daegu, but she hasn't recently been abroad, nor has she been in contact with the other patients. President Moon Jaein calls on South Korean officials to use every means at their disposal to minimize the outbreak's impact on the economy. He says timing is of the essence. And experts at the World Trade Organization and others say the coronavirus is dealing a blow to trade. Companies around the world depend on supplies from China, where an untold number of businesses have had to stop work. It's 4:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. South Korea has reported another case of the coronavirus today, bringing the total now to 31. In addition to that one, the health authorities are still trying to figure out how the 29th and 30th patients got infected. With the latest, we have our Kim Mo-gyan on the line. Mo-gyan?
Yes, Devin. The 31st patient is a 61-year-old South Korean woman. She lives in the city of Daegu, which is about 300 kilometers southeast of Seoul. According to the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, she has not recently traveled overseas. Prior to the confirmation of her infection, she had been hospitalized because of a car accident and had also been to a hotel restaurant and attended 2 religious services. The patient had a fever and showed symptoms of pneumonia when she visited a local community center on Monday. She was immediately quarantined at Daegu Medical Center and was tested for the virus twice in a row, and both results came out positive. It's the first confirmed case in Daegu. Again, it's not clear how she was infected since she has not been overseas recently and has not had any contact with the previous 30 patients. And also this morning, 2 more patients who fully recovered have been released from quarantine, bringing the total number of recovered patients to 12 out of the total 31. Meanwhile, news has broken that a Korean national died this afternoon from pneumonia-like symptoms. According to authorities, this was a man in his 30s who went to China last month. The KCDC is currently looking to whether he was infected with COVID-19. If confirmed, this will be the first coronavirus death in South Korea. That's all from me now. I'll be back with more updates in our later newscast.
All right, Kim Mo-gyan, thank you very much. Meanwhile, a South Korean plane sent by the presidential office has arrived at Japan's Haneda Airport in Tokyo to evacuate South Koreans stuck on board the Diamond Princess cruise ship. It'll bring back 4 South Korean passengers and a Japanese national married to one of the South Koreans on Wednesday morning. There are 14 South Koreans on the ship, but only 4 of them wanted to be taken off. None of them are known to be infected. The ship has been docked off the Japanese port city of Yokohama since February 3rd. Once the group arrives at Seoul's Gimpo International Airport, they'll be taken to a temporary living facility to stay for the next 2 weeks. And with more people testing positive for the coronavirus on the Diamond Princess, Japan now has by far the highest number of confirmed cases outside China. And experts say the spread of the virus in Japan is about to accelerate or is accelerating already. Park Se-young has more.
The number of confirmed coronavirus cases on the quarantined Diamond Princess cruise ship in Yokohama has been rising rapidly. Another 99 cases were confirmed aboard the ship on Monday. If the cruise ship is included, Japan has the second most confirmed cases after China. And authorities are still investigating how other individuals across Japan, from Tokyo to Wakayama and Okinawa prefectures, have contacted the virus. The Japanese government said Monday that it will assess what measures the country can take if faced with an increasing number of infections.
The situation in Japan is such that there are multiple cases for which it may not be possible to determine infection pathways. And so the current discussion is that it is necessary for the government to be taking measures going forward under the scenario where we are faced with the increased number of patients.
Despite facing global criticism for its lax initial response to the outbreak, Japanese politicians and senior doctors are still refusing to describe it as an epidemic. Public health experts are advising the government to shift the focus from attempts to keep the virus out of the country to instead slowing its spread within Japan and reducing deaths among those already infected.
My view, and also Dr. Wakita's view, is that we are just about entering the accelerating phase, or maybe we enter, something along that line. Now, the response to this virus should be modified, adjusted according to the stage.
The coronavirus outbreak has prompted the Japanese government to limit public gatherings. The emperor's birthday celebrations scheduled for Sunday were canceled, and the Tokyo Marathon, one of the largest in the world, will be restricted to elite professional runners to contain the spread of the virus. However, the Naked Man Festival went ahead in Yokohama on Saturday despite fears over the outbreak. Some 10,000 men braved both the cold and the virus to gather and compete for the sacred offerings thrown to the crowds. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
China's Hubei province, the epicenter of the outbreak, reported 93 additional deaths on Monday and more than 1,800 new cases. According to the Chinese government, the country's death toll now stands at 1,868, with more than 72,000 infected in total. These numbers are declining, but the WHO says we should interpret the trend very cautiously. Lee Seung-jae reports.
China released a paper Monday containing detailed data on more than 44,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19, aiming to get a better understanding about the age range of people affected, the severity of the disease, and the mortality rate. The report also shows the number of new cases appears to be on the decline. However, despite the seemingly positive report, the head of the WHO says it must be interpreted cautiously.
The data also appear to show a decline in new cases. This trend must be interpreted very cautiously. Trends can change as new populations are affected. It's too early to tell if this reported decline will continue. Every scenario is still on the table.
As whether the COVID-19 outbreak is a pandemic, the head of the WHO's emergencies program says people should be cautious using the word pandemic, as it could spark fear throughout the world.
So therefore, I think we have to be very, very careful, not to drive fear in the world right now, and be very cautious in using the words you have used. We've said it, the risk is very high in China, it is high regionally, and it is high around the world. That is not the risk is high of a pandemic. The risk is high that the disease may spread further. And I think at face value, that is true.
The latest data provided by the Chinese government shows the number of new COVID-19 cases have fallen to their lowest level in 3 weeks. Since the start of the outbreak in late December, China has reported over 70,000 cases in total, including more than 1,700 deaths. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
At South Korea's National Assembly, where lawmakers are giving policy speeches for this month's extraordinary session, the floor leader of the ruling Democratic Party, Lee In-young, has promised to help people with their livelihoods, which have been hurt by the coronavirus outbreak. He said that financial support will be expanded to affected small businesses and the self-employed. He called on the opposition to cooperate in passing 4 bills in the February session related to dealing with infectious diseases. The ruling party floor leader also took the podium to apologize for scandals related to reform of the prosecution and for failing to manage the rise in housing prices, and he vowed to humbly work to improve the public's welfare. To prevent infection with the coronavirus, people have been buying masks, sanitizers, and simply staying at home instead of going out. When it comes to protecting yourself, it can be hard to know what's the best way. And to be sure, there's a lot of misleading information online. So our Choi Jang-yoon asked some professionals.
Infodemic. That's how the World Health Organization described the huge numbers of stories about the coronavirus, referring to an overabundance of information. Some stories are accurate and some are not. It's making it hard for people to find trustworthy sources. Fears surrounding the virus have been amplified by social media. One of many questions is whether the virus can spread through public toilets. The answer is no.
The virus is transmitted by droplets from a patient. It can infect the person through contact with the skin. But people should flush the toilet with the top down and always wash their hands after using the toilet and try to avoid touching their eyes, nose, or face.
Some worry about catching the virus from their pets. However, the types of coronavirus that cats and dogs can catch are different from those that affect humans. While animals have problems with their digestive systems due to coronaviruses, the novel coronavirus rather causes fever and respiratory problems. While we don't yet have a cure for COVID-19, coronaviruses that affect animals are easily curable. And the new epidemic is not communicable between humans and animals.
The coronaviruses animals have don't affect humans, and there have been no reports of COVID-19 being transmitted between humans and animals.
Online, there have been rumors that the virus can be prevented by taking vitamins and substances like ginseng that boost immune systems. However, there's no prevention or cure for the virus at the moment. Antibiotics work on bacteria but cannot stop viruses such as COVID-19.
Vitamins and medical herbs can boost your immune system. It's the same for exercising and eating well. But while these substances strengthen the immune system, they don't cure the virus itself. Certain medicine prevents the virus from sticking to respiratory cells, but that's just lowering the chances of infection.
Washing your hands is the most effective way to prevent infection. While there's some debate over whether soap or hand sanitizer is more effective, experts say there's not much difference. According to a recent experiment, 96% of bacteria were eliminated by washing one's hands for 30 seconds. Sanitizer killed 95% of germs. Experts say soap is effective enough and sanitizers are recommended for their convenience. 최정윤, 아리랑 뉴스.
South Korean Defense Minister Chung Kyung-do will be paying an official visit next week to the U.S. for a bilateral meeting with his U.S. counterpart, Mark Esper. Seoul's defense ministry said Chung will leave for Washington on Sunday and attend the meeting the next day. It'll be Chung's first visit to the U.S. since Esper was appointed last July. They'll be discussing the defense cost-sharing negotiations, the South Korea-U.S. combined military exercises, as well as the transfer of wartime operational control from Washington to Seoul. While there, Chung will attend events commemorating Korean War veterans in light of the war's 70th anniversary. President Moon Jaein has called on the government to review all possible means to dampen the coronavirus's economic fallout. The situation is worse than expected, he said, and he called for officials drawing up policies to use their imaginations. Kim Min-ji reports.
President Moon Jaein has called for officials to use all possible means to minimize the fallout of the COVID-19 outbreak on the economy. Speaking in a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, President Moon said it's an emergency, noting that the fallout could be greater than previous epidemics like SARS and MERS.
전례가 있다, 없다를 따지지 말고 생각할 수 있는 대책들을 책상 위에 모두 꺼내놓고 가능한 모든 수단을 동원해야 할 것입니다. 정책은 타이밍이 생명입니다.
President Moon said the cabinet's approval of emergency funds worth some $80 million is just a start, adding that budget implementation alone is not enough. He called for support packages to minimize the fallout on local companies that depend on China for exports or production, while urging officials to review potential financial support or tax breaks for small businesses. He also called for aggressive regulatory reforms and incentives to encourage companies to invest. The president also stressed the need for continued efforts to diversify Korea's export partners and develop homegrown materials and technology to minimize its dependence on other countries. Moon also reiterated his call for people not to worry too much and to carry on with their daily lives as usual, saying excessive fear will only weigh on the economy even further. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The World Trade Organization says that because of the coronavirus, global trade in merchandise is likely to remain weak in the early part of this year. According to the WTO Trade Goods Barometer, the real-time measure of trade trends stands at 95.5, which is well below the baseline value of 100. The WTO said the performance could be reduced further by what it called a new global health threat, namely COVID-19. It added that the barometer will be influenced by the economic impact of the virus and the effectiveness of efforts to contain it. China accounts for almost a fifth of global GDP and supplies countries all around the world. So the coronavirus has the potential to put a huge dent in global growth. To find out about the extent and duration of the damage, our Kim Da-mi spoke with some experts.
China has set an ambitious 6% GDP growth target for 2020, but the coronavirus will make it hard to reach that goal. The virus is expected to have a bigger impact than the SARS outbreak in 2003, which killed 800 people worldwide and shaved almost 1% off China's growth.
When compared with the SARS crisis, the economic impact from the coronavirus outbreak will be sharper and deeper. China's economy has grown 4 times bigger since then, making up almost 18% of the global economy.
And it's not just China's problem. China has grown faster than any major economy to become the world's second biggest by GDP. And as China is a key part of a range of global supply chains, the outbreak will have a knock-on effect worldwide, with those countries more reliant on China feeling even more of an impact. The world's biggest smartphone chipmaker Qualcomm cautioned that the outbreak was causing significant uncertainty over demand for smartphones, as well as the supplies needed to produce them. The travel and tourism industry is also among the most vulnerable. Nearly 6 million people from China visited South Korea last year, but data shows that the country could lose a large number of those tourists. Moody's has lowered SARS GDP growth forecast once again from 2.1 to 1.9%. Singapore's Trade Ministry on Monday also cut its GDP forecast for this year due to the outbreak. But with major businesses across China gradually resuming operation, some believe in a V-shaped impact like the SARS crisis.
In other words, sharp decline in economic activities in China, followed by rapid recovery, and a total impact on China relatively contained, therefore impact on the world economy also contained.
A rebound after a short, sharp economic shock is possible under certain circumstances.
Major businesses and factories across China need to resume operation under the Chinese government's systematic economic policies and containment measures. Most importantly, the spread of the virus needs to stop.
The IMF chief has also warned that the coronavirus outbreak could drag down the global economy. And with uncertainties over the situation in China, G20 finance ministers and central bankers will gather in Saudi Arabia this week to discuss the possible cost of the outbreak. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon. And for that, I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yoo, global strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yoo, thanks as always for making time today.
Thank you for having me today.
So the U.S. markets were closed Monday for President's Day, but coming off a strong showing last week. European markets, though, up across the board. Asian markets, just the opposite. What's the story today globally?
Sure. Monday, U.S. market was closed because of the President's Day, but Apple said on Monday that it does not expect to meet its second quarter forecast for the revenue. The company cited that global supply constraints for iPhones and lower Chinese demand as a result of the coronavirus outbreak. Apple said that in late January that it expected revenue of $63 billion to $67 billion in its fiscal second quarter because of the coronavirus, that they were giving a big range of number. With this news, a lot of people are concerned about the first quarter economic slowdown due to the coronavirus impact. That has resulted into oil price decline as well as the long end of the bond rate falling on a global scale. People are concerned about the recessionary worries. Due to this, most of the Asian market has fallen, and it seems that the Korea have been affected the most.
Yeah, well, Korean stocks, as you say, down quite a bit over the past few weeks from the coronavirus outbreak, and today as well. What's it look like in the local markets?
Right, as you said, Korea's downturn seems to be much bigger than most of the other countries. Today, the Kospi is down 1.5%, and also Kosdaq is down 1.4%. The main reason for that is because people are concerned about the impact of the coronavirus. There's a new patient coming out from Korea, 29th patient and the 30th patient, and The question mark is how the 29th patients caught the virus. It's quite disturbing with that. So because of this, people are concerned about the economic activity slowing down much longer than expected. And therefore, Korean market have shown much bigger correction than others. Clearly, this was also same case for Japan. Japan has corrected as well quite significantly today. The reason for that is because of the same issues with the news that the cruise ship patients rose by 454. So clearly, people are concerned about the containment of the coronavirus issues. So all that is resulting into much weaker demand concern and therefore economic recessionary worries. And that is affecting the share price movement for Korea as well as Japan at this point.
And meanwhile, OPEC is having to prop up oil prices on expectations that the coronavirus is going to deal a big blow to demand. What exactly is happening there, and what's your outlook for oil?
Yes, the oil price were a little changed on Monday, but today the futures are indicating it is going down by around 0.75 to 1%. Clearly, the concern is over the fuel demand caused by the economic fallout from the coronavirus outbreak in China. But that is expected to be offset by some expectations of output cuts from the major producers, including U.S. even. So because of that, the price seems to be fairly stable. But nevertheless, we don't think that there's any possibility that the oil price can rise significantly from current level, even though the vulnerabilities that they may be cutting the productions. The IEA said that last week the virus is set to cause oil demand to fall by 435,000 barrels a day in the first quarter of 2020 from the same period of a year ago. So YOY number will go down by that much. If that's the case, then clearly oil price is not going to have any trend to rise in the future. Of course, hopefully that economic activity recovers in second quarter from the first quarter, that the demand for oil picks up. If that's the case, then yes, the oil price can rise from current $52 range to maybe as high as $60. But for the time being, people are still concerned how long this coronavirus outbreak is going to affect the global economy. If the numbers are not going down and there's continuing concern about the additional patients coming through in various other countries, then this concern can last till the second quarter of this year. If that's the case, then the oil price might not show any type of recovery. So we think that the oil price might remain at a box range, but much lower range than before. So more likely the oil price will remain somewhere between $50 to $55 range, rather than before $55 to $65 range.
All right, Mr. Yoo, we'll be watching that in the weeks and months to come. We'll have to leave it there for today, though. Thanks for joining us, as always.
Thank you very much.
Now, it's been about 7 months since Japan first imposed trade curbs on South Korea, but the boycott of Japanese products here goes on. According to data from the Korea Customs Service, the amount of consumer goods imported from Japan stood at just $190 million last month, a 36% drop on year. Imports of Japanese beer were down 98% on year. Imports of Japanese vehicles also dropped by nearly 70%. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, the richest person in the world, has unveiled his ambitious plan to help tackle climate change, promising $10 billion for the Bezos Earth Fund. Our Yoon Jung-min has the details.
Amazon founder Jeff Bezos has pledged $10 billion for his ambitious Bezos Earth Fund to combat climate change. He wrote on his Instagram on Monday that the fund will issue grants to scientists, activists, and other organizations to help their efforts to protect nature. The grants will be issued this summer. The Amazon founder added he will work with others to amplify known ways and to explore new ways of fighting the impact of climate change. Amazon employees for climate justice said they support Bezos' move, but they are still concerned about the company's support of the oil and gas industry. The announcement comes as Amazon seeks to address criticisms that the business is fueling global carbon emissions. Amazon has been launching initiatives to reduce its environmental impact in recent months.
Last year, Bezos unveiled an ambitious plan to tackle climate change and showed his support for the Paris Agreement goals, despite President Trump pulling out of the accord. As part of Amazon's efforts, it plans to use electric vans to deliver packages to its customers from 2021. 윤정민, Arirang News.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.